family. It's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offer trauma healing trainings across the country. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today I'm excited to welcome to the show an amazing woman of God who I had the opportunity to meet. I think it's been over a year now at a conference event. She also is a mental health professional, which you're going to learn more about. And we were attending a Christian counseling practice event or conference. And so I had the opportunity to meet Kandice Moss, who is the owner of Moss Therapy and Wellness at this event. And she does group creative arts therapy and counseling. She is a board certified dance movement psychotherapist, that's a mouthful, and a licensed professional counselor. Her personal experience of the healing power of dance and movement has really inspired her to do this work. And you're going to learn more about her practice, her passion, her story during our podcast episode today. So I'm just really grateful that you accepted my invitation, Kandice. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jocelyn. I'm excited to be here and happy to share information to your listeners. And yeah, I'm just excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, I would love for you to begin by just sharing a little bit about what led you to this space. Talk about your background, what inspired you to work in the mental health profession. Well, let's start there.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, growing up, I was a lover of dance, and I used to take just regular traditional dance classes. And then with it being coupled with my faith, my grandfather was a pastor, and there would be opportunities where there would be different events, and the idea of offering the worship, offering worship through movement and dance was presented and was welcomed. So that sort of started the journey of more of a spiritual awakening of my love for dance in that space. And then still coupling my love for dance and traditional dance studio avenues. I recognized that I didn't care much for the competitiveness of the dance studios. I just wanted the space to move. And not until I got into undergrad did I begin to start the process of developing a dance studio with hopes that it would be more of a space, not at the time, not knowing a therapeutic space, but hoping that it would be a therapeutic space for just an outlet for people like that were probably similar to me, that just wanted space to dance without the pressures of competition and getting it right and all these other things. So developed the dance studio alongside with being an undergrad. And I think my senior year is when I started to kind of dive a little bit deeper into wanting more for the dance studio. But at the time, I didn't have the language of what I felt more was, that I wanted it to be this therapeutic space. I wanted it to be I wanted dancers and those that participated in the space to have more understanding of why they're moving the way that they're moving, and why does it feel this way, and what's evoking these particular types of expression. But I didn't understand. I just knew I wanted to include and incorporate the whys behind things. So at the time, also, I was a senior in college, and there was a flyer that was in an elective course that I was taking, a dance class. That was an elective course, and it had the little phone number at the bottom where you could tear off. And those were the flyer was present. It was from the institution, the school that I attended, Columbia College Chicago, that was offering sort of like this webinar or some type of just learning experience of dance movement therapy. And I took that information, and from then on, it was just been researching since, right? I was trying to find the closest school that offered this program for graduate school and trying to figure that out. So from that day on, it was just constant research of how do I become a part of this, where these two worlds that I was creating in my head, I didn't know really existed, of the psychology and sociology of people and being and communities and its impact on a person's psychology. So yeah, it started there. And yeah, that path of how I got through that particular part of my life, that's another conversation. But
That's a
yes,
whole
but
nother
yes, that's kind of
podcast
what started.
episode. Right.
Yes.
No, but that's so cool. And, I'd never heard of that before, really interacting with you and learning about how powerful it is. And I'm sure some of our listeners are saying, I didn't even know there was such a thing as dance therapy. I know I love to dance. I know I enjoy that. I believe maybe in counseling and mental health, but blending the two together, that's new to me. So can you really speak to what is this concept of dance therapy?
So, according to the Association of Dance Movement Therapy, um, dance movement therapy is the psychotherapeutic use of movement, which promotes social, emotional, cognitive, physical integration to the well-being for an individual. Myself, I've sort of adopted that definition and have sort of expanded it into individuals, couples, families, communities. So yeah, it's taking the psychology of um, all the various approaches that we're aware of and connecting it to a greater understanding of body and movement. And depending upon the audience that I'm talking to, I may say I'm a dance movement therapist. At times I may say I'm a movement therapist, which there are some overlap within some of the somatic spirit areas of expertise. But more than anything, movement is what I'm sort of my lens is where I'm viewing the world. Movement, so how a person walks, the proximity of where they are in space with others, and how they're engaging or engaging with themselves. So is their breath shallow or deep? So movement in and of the more finest sense is sort of where my lens always stems from. So recognizing that we have heartbeats, we have breath, that's sort of the first form of rhythm that's taking place, that is already creating this dance with self. So dance in a way that there's this exchange of being with self and other, right? Even in our conversation here we're having today, there's this dance in a sense where I'm speaking and then we pause and then I pause and then you speak. So there's this exchange of give and take. In the literal sense of dance, when you're moving, there's a leader, there's a follower. So how that concept of dance can sort of be expanded into relationships. How does a parent hold their child? What are those subtle nuances that are present? How might a partner, how might a relationship, a marriage or relationship be present, and how does the couple interact within their dance, within their relationship? So it has developed over the years of with myself being in practice and again how I view the world, where there's this constant exchange and sort of dance happening.
Very cool. And I know you were kind of talking about different things like breath and just like how we really have dance in various forms, even with us talking. I think that's a great example. But when we talk about what's happening in your sessions or when you're working with a client as it relates to them struggling with trauma or grief or
Mhm.
loss, let's kind of give an example of what are some of the things that you might have a client do that is a dance therapy technique that will help them in their healing process.
So there are various sort of concepts within the approach and practice itself. Attunement is one there that within a session, depending upon where I am with the client, might be attuning to them on a body level. So if I recognize that we're having dialogue about a trauma or grief surrounding, I don't know, maybe their own personal experience within their community. And maybe violence was a strong indicator within their community. And they're now experiencing symptoms of PTSD. When we're having discussion about maybe their street or their neighborhood that they grew up, and I start to notice where their hand placement may be. Maybe their hand placement shifts from a more open body posture to more of an enclosed space. I might begin to attune with them even in their body, in addition to the active listening, in addition to the validation that I might provide verbally. So my body is also attuning to where they are and what the experience is like, so that I'm gaining an even deeper understanding of what having discussion about this very maybe violent neighborhood was like for them, and the challenges of falling asleep at night and hearing gun violence or whatever the case is. So by those particular methods, I'm able to, again, gain greater understanding and providing with hopes that providing a sense of understanding for the client that, wow, okay, she really is understanding what my experiences are. And even being able to name whatever that posture is, right? So calling out to them, hey, I noticed that upon you sharing this experience with me, your posture changed. Can you talk a little about that? Right. So naming sort of where their place in space is changing or shifting, and giving them opportunities to modulate from that, giving them tools to learn how to modulate from that very maybe fear posture that they were holding. What is it about it that makes them fearful? What is it about it that makes them sort of go inward? Um, are they noticing that they do that when they just ride down the street and they don't even live there anymore? So how can I give them tools to kind of heal through the use of their body and using their body as resources, to reframe cognitively, but also reframe physically, how they relate to that experience.
And so I remember having a conversation with you several months back where you talked about that reframing and possibly doing something different when you're with your body in certain situations. Can you dig a little bit deeper as it relates to that process of reframing and maybe doing some cognitive work there?
So the first is giving them psychoeducation about it. It's just giving them awareness, like, hey, I noticed this in your body. And they're like, oh, I didn't even notice I did that when we were talking about that topic. Or, you know what? So maybe homework would be, okay, so maybe you have to go in that area this weekend, or homework will be to go to a park nearby. And how do you hold yourself in space this time? So giving them sort of techniques where they have to sort of be exposed to the experience, where I'm providing them also with breath work. Okay, how might we incorporate grounding within this experience as you're being exposed to it? How might you be able to even have some redirecting that negative self-talk or those intrusive thoughts, to something more positive, where you're acknowledging that I'm safe. I'm not in that moment as I was when I was 10, or whatever the case. So giving them practical examples of how to show up in the space, literally, and how they may be able to couple that with the cognitive reframing by naming where they are in the present moment, being able to tap into those more present moment awarenesses.
That's very interesting. And so say for instance, someone is in an environment and it takes them back. It's like
Mhm.
it was very traumatic. They have PTSD that they're working through. They're having an emotional response. They do the work that you tried to have them do, whether it's grounding, reframing. How does that help them as it relates to their healing? Like what's happening cognitively if they apply some of these skills that you're
Yeah.
describing?
It's almost working backwards. We're learning what we've learned, and then we're hoping to unlearn them to learn something new within the brain, so that when these traumatic events has taken place, um, there's a visceral response. Our nervous system responds to it and says, oh, this is information for us to know, which then fires the neurons in the brain that says this event happened. And when this event happened, your body feels like this. So if these are recurring patterns of behaviors or recurring traumatic events that are happening, that brain is firing over and over again that these are and your nervous system responds this way. I'm in shock. I'm in a state of a state of dysregulation and stress response, and I need to fight or freeze. I need to do something or fawn. So the pattern or the hope of working through movement with a movement therapist is not only are you shifting the firings, right, by introducing them to or exposing them to an experience, but then also giving them tools, healthy tools of how to respond to it. Now you're training the brain to fire in a different way and say, nope, I don't want to fire the way that I used to when I was 10. Now that I'm getting these tools and these tips, now I can be exposed or have maybe similar experiences that may trigger me, but I'm responding to it differently. Now my brain is firing in a totally different manner, and those neurons are saying, oh, I respond in this way. So now I'm also resetting that nervous system to offer a new way of experiencing this. So I think I use the term modulate, right? That I'm able to modulate not only from this type of response, but I'm modulating to a more healthier response so that I'm able to experience life more healthily in various situations.
That's very helpful. And I think understanding the neuroscience behind it, which is what you were kind of diving into, is helping individuals to see, okay, this is why my therapist or someone who's working with me is asking me to apply these practices, because they actually do help to rewire the brain and how it processes things. So that's very helpful. Hey everyone, I needed to interrupt today's broadcast for an important announcement to all my sisters out there. If you know that God is calling you to take your ministry beyond the church walls, then the Beyond the Pulpit Women's Conference is for you. On November 1st, we are taking our ministry to the next level, having a conference committed to helping you to move beyond fear, gain clarity, and take your bold next steps to prepare you for the new year and what's ahead. And so if you are interested in taking your ministry to that next level, then I encourage you to join us for the Beyond the Pulpit Women's Conference on November 1st. Mark your calendars and visit the links in the show notes to get your ticket today. Now back to the show. In addition to dance movement therapy, your faith plays a big role in what you do. And I would love for you to spend a little bit of time around talking about your faith and the integration in the work that you do as well.
Given the opportunity within my grandfather's church to dance, and at some point even extending that into the dance studio, and then people would invite me to come to their churches. It just kind of grew and developed into more of a spiritual connection with my relationship with him. And that has also since evolved into my practice as a professional counselor, recognizing how supportive it was for me. And then also recognizing that there are other people that may have similar interests. So while I'm a Christian that also happens to be a counselor, I am also able to respect where others are on their journey. And if clients happen to come into session, which that's typically one of the questions that I'll ask of, are there religious beliefs or practices that they want to be incorporated within our services together? And that can look different in so many ways. Through the use of movement, sometimes I request clients to say, hey, send me your playlist. And we may, have some discussion around what compels them to these particular artists and or songs, and how some of them may be useful in their treatment. It's a very creative approach that I think that the foundation of it is coming from the place that my faith is sort of guiding me on this path, because the work that we do is so hard, is so hard and taxing, that some of the tangible, practical ways that I suggest to clients, sometimes that may not be enough. And for myself, I'm hoping to come and start each day sort of renewed and refreshed and refilled. And I have to get that from a source so that I can continue to support others on their journey. And that it's not weighing on me. So I recognize that the space that I'm in is greater than what I'm capable of. So yeah, that's how I incorporate it and practice it daily.
That's good stuff, Candice. And I would love for you to just to share from your experience over the years working with many people on their healing journey. Could you describe what healing looks like? If you were to define healing, people come with different definitions. Uh, can you share your perspective on that?
I'm always looking for those subtle nuances. I'm always looking for how a person may approach or come into the session um, apprehensive to talk about maybe a certain topic. And through continuous treatment and continuous, work that they're doing, even outside the session, I'm even looking at, how there may be a subtle change in how they approach the topic over the course of treatment, maybe by month two, and like, hey, just bringing to their attention, like this was a really difficult topic for you a month and a half ago, and look how you're approaching it now. So I think that those are ways of quote unquote healing, um that they're able to grow their window of tolerance. They're able to address things that initially felt hard, and they're able to share it with others as well. That's also healing. That when you're in a space that not only have you made exponential growth, but you're also able to share it with others in a way that is brings hope to them, and then maybe also brings some. It's also important to remind yourself where you've come from. So hearing yourself tell others of where you've come from, that also provides you with insight of, just a reminder, a nice reminder of where you've come from and what your path of healing has looked like.
That's very helpful. I think sometimes we really do forget how far we've come. We're just so focused on being
Hmm.
strong and moving forward, but just taking time to look back and saying, God has brought me through a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah.
And you're right. When I was sharing this story a few years ago, a few months ago, I couldn't even get through, the first sentence without busting out in tears. Now I might shed a tear, but, I can get through it. I can share. And that's just a reflection of our process.
Yeah.
And I think, when we talk about the healing journey, it really is a journey. It's ongoing because there's always things that we need to, work through and process. It's an evolution. But
Hmm.
I appreciate you pointing out that there's small things that can reflect our growth in our progress in our healing journey. And so that was beautiful, Candice.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
so if someone is listening right now who is really going through a difficult time, whether it's a loss, whether it's trauma that they've experienced, or just in a season where they're just going through different trials, what words of encouragement would you offer them? And is there any practices that you can also encourage them to incorporate in their life that might help them to navigate this season?
Practices for sure is I would first recommend um quieting and slowing down enough to even notice your body. I think that it's so uh habitual and just natural to go go go. But even with myself personally, and kind of using this for myself, that even though I may have a full day of clients, that there is a moment where I can slow down and kind of check in and kind of reassess and reflect on what has my day been like? What does my body feel like? Like, my body kind of feels different today. Why does it feel different? And just asking yourself those curious questions. Why does it feel different today? And being in a place that it feels like you're curious about yourself and not critical of yourself. Like, oh, I've got to get it together versus why am I feeling sluggish today? Okay, I did eat that. Okay. Or I did drink that, or whatever the case. But then asking, what can I do differently? What can I do differently? Proper planning for it if there are opportunities to do so. But more than anything, just learning how to be curious with ourselves. That takes a lot of intentionality versus, easier to just criticize self and say what I'm not doing. But the curiosity of asking, well, what's the why behind that? And how is that showing up in my body? Why, how is that showing up in my body where my shoulder may be a little tense? Like, you know what? Why is that shoulder like that? Maybe I was on the computer a little bit more yesterday, or whatever the case. But asking yourself those questions, again, imparting that compassion that God so, presently offers to us, asking those curious and compassionate questions to self, and body, and how knowledgeable our bodies are, that will give us insight if we just pause or slow down enough to ask it, and check in with it. Yeah.
I love that you said curious, not critical. I wrote it down because I think we can default to being critical when we observe certain things. We can say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have,
Mhm.
got upset there. Why did I do that? And it's like, wait, yeah, why did you do it? Explore why, but don't beat yourself up. This is an opportunity for being curious. So that helped me right there, Kandice. So, and I'm sure
Good.
it helps someone else who was listening. So,
Oh my.
so Kandice, how can people learn more about you? Where are you based out of? And where can people connect with you?
Yes, yes. So I'm based out of Michigan. My practice is in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is maybe about 15 or 20 minutes, 10 minutes or so from Detroit. And we are seeing clients in person and virtual as well. I have onboarded additional staff, and the hope is that they get to experience, regardless of having a dance movement therapist or a licensed clinical social worker or a licensed art therapist or anything, that you're still experiencing our tagline, which is, we want you to move, be moved, and move others. Regardless, again, this dance can be a talking dance. It doesn't have to be the physical dance. So the hope is that you experience that within our practice.
That's awesome, Kandice. Thank you so much for what you do and for being a guest and sharing with our listeners today. Really appreciate you being here with us. And I thank you all for tuning into today's episode of Faith on the Journey. I hope you were blessed by it. And if you were, you know what to do. Please leave a 5-star review and share this episode with a friend. Also, if you're looking for a Christian counselor or resources for trauma healing, feel free to visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. So that's it for this week's episode, family. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, you stay encouraged and you keep your faith on the